Hi, I'm Lisa Leiter in Chicago Business Today, Political Week in Review. Each week I'll sit down with our political columnist Greg Hinz to talk about the race to become Chicago's next mayor. With just weeks before Election Day, the campaign will no doubt start to get in high gear. Since we last spoke, James Meeks and Danny Davis dropped out of the race, and Rahm Emanuel won a favorable ruling from a circuit court judge about his residency. Here are the highlights of my conversation with Greg. Greg, since we last spoke, James Meeks and Danny Davis out of the race, the black community putting its money behind Carol Moseley Braun. Was this the right move?
Well, the idea wasn't bad, but the execution was really awful. I mean, anybody who lives in Chicago and knows politics knows that the first thing any politician does is try to rally his or her base. And it's understandable that African Americans would kind of want to rally behind one of their own to give them a fighting chance to win the job. But this thing was so overt and crude, and there were so many statements to the effect that we have to have a black mayor, that I frankly think it was insulting to a lot of African Americans. Because, yeah, what about quality and ability and what you bring to the job? And from a political perspective, in proclaiming herself as the black candidate, the problem is that to everybody else who's not black, she proclaimed herself as the black candidate. I thought this town had kind of moved beyond that kind of blatant appeal. I thought they overdid it.
Carol Moseley Braun clearly did not have her best week. There was all this snafu with the tax returns. I mean, can she come back from this? I mean, what is she really going to have to do to win over the voters here?
She can come back, but boy, she's got to get her act together in a hurry now. I mean, here, all the other black candidates drop out, so she's in a position to unify support behind her and get some money and resources, whatever. But she knows she's got these income taxes to put out. Well, the first rule of public relations in private or public life is if you've got bad news, get rid of it all at once, don't dribble it out, and do it like at 4 a.m. in the morning when nobody is listening. Well, she flipped it off. Well, I don't feel like giving you my tax returns. What? I mean, Rahm Emanuel Chico did. I don't feel like it. And so she had to back off. Then she releases the returns, and they indicate that she's had real financial problems, that she's setting up a business and it hasn't done very well. She won't answer questions about it. She doesn't release the supporting documents, and as it turns out, the losses weren't just from a coffee and tea company that she ran, but from a professional speaking company she ran, which in my mind raises the question of, well, hey, if you're the first black woman ever serving the United States Senate and an ambassador, how can you lose money running a speaking company? But she and her people haven't been around to answer those questions.
And at the time when, money and running the city from a fiscal standpoint is of critical importance, if she can't get her own fiscal house and affairs, of course the voters questioning whether she would be able to help the city out of its crisis.
Yeah, I mean, there was a way to spin this that, hey, folks, I share your economic pain. I know what you're going through. Look at what's happened to me, and if that puts me in a better position to help you along. But they didn't do it. That potential message got overwhelmed by just what you're talking about.
Sure. Well, let's move on to Rahm Emanuel, who clearly had a victory from the circuit court judge this week on his residency front. Have we heard the last of this? It's going to the appeals court, but are we expecting any surprises there?
This is headed for the Illinois Supreme Court, where the question that counts may be, what does Justice Ann Burke, the wife of Chicago Alderman Ann Burke, and the swing vote potentially on the court, what does she do?
Okay. There was some focus on the issues, thank goodness, this week. We're talking about that. You had Gary Chico unveiling his job creation plan, and Rahm Emanuel talking about this after-school program that he wants to fund with ads on garbage trucks, right? What do you make of both of these plans?
I think that there's some good elements of both of these. It's hard to argue with the notion that school kids need things other than trouble in the streets, and that we ought to try to pay for it privately rather than imposing a tax. And I thought Mr. Chico had some interesting ideas on how to create jobs in Chicago. For instance, recalculating the city's much criticized TIF program so that instead of building buildings that may attract jobs later, we'll attract jobs, and if the jobs are there, well, of course, some real estate guy is going to come in and build a building.
Exactly. Well, Greg, I know you'll be watching. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's this edition of Chicago Business Today. Be sure to check out Greg's blog at chicagobusiness.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.